My mother was the Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity.
In moments of crisis, the royal family often turns to tradition, silence, and carefully chosen words. Yet this time, Princess Anne shattered that silence with a revelation that left both King Charles and Prince William utterly speechless. She unveiled a deeply personal message from Queen Elizabeth herself, one that carried profound meaning about Catherine's place within the monarchy. It wasn't just a message of love, it was a directive that could reshape the future of the crown. So what exactly did the late Queen reveal about Catherine's destiny? The Queen's secret choice. The palace has always held secrets, but some are heavier than others. Among the dust of ancient corridors and the silence of guarded rooms, one revelation has begun to rise like smoke. It wasn't about King Charles. It wasn't even about Prince William. Instead, it centered on someone else, someone the late Queen believed could carry the future of the monarchy in her hands. Catherine, the Princess of Wales. That quiet night, long after the world had turned off its lights, the palace itself seemed to hold its breath. Fog curled around the gates, cloaking London in mystery. Inside, Princess Anne moved with quiet purpose. She had chosen that moment deliberately, a time when there would be no interruptions, no advisors hovering with careful words. She sent for Charles and William. Only the three of them. No more, no less. The room was one of history's keepers, with dark wood paneling, heavy curtains, and portraits of monarchs who had once shaped empires glaring down from gilded frames. They had seen generations rise and fall, and now they bore witness to yet another turning point. Anne didn't waste words. Instead, she placed a folded letter on the table. The paper was worn from being held too many times, its creases deep, its ink faint in places. It was the Queen's hand, her thoughts preserved for the moment when truth could no longer be delayed. Charles reached first, his fingers trembling slightly, as though he already feared what was inside. William leaned close, his brows drawn, reading every line as if it might change on the page. Neither spoke. The tick of the clock above the fireplace filled the silence, its rhythm too loud for the stillness of the room. The Queen's words were direct. She had written that Catherine, not Charles or William, held the trust of the people. She had observed her daughter-in-law's patience, her quiet discipline, her refusal to be drawn into drama or scandal. Catherine had not chased power, but the public had given her their confidence all the same. And the Queen, seasoned by decades of reigning, believed that in Catherine lay the monarchy's true chance of survival. For a moment, the air thickened. Charles broke the silence first, muttering almost to himself, "This isn't how it's done." His voice cracked under the weight of it. His face looked older, wearier, as though the crown he had so recently taken up had suddenly grown heavier still. William remained silent. His eyes didn't move from the letter, but his jaw tightened, his hands opening and closing against his knees. What must it have felt like, reading that his own destiny might not be the one his grandmother had imagined? Anne's expression never wavered. She wasn't there to argue. She wasn't there to soothe. She was there because her mother had entrusted her with this final truth. She spoke only once, her tone even. Catherine doesn't just wear the crown well. She makes people believe in it again. William finally lifted his head. His voice was low, heavy with confusion. "Why didn't she tell us before?" Anne gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe she thought you weren't ready to hear it." No one said another word. The three of them sat in the shadow of portraits and silence, the letter on the table between them like something alive. The world outside slept, unaware that inside those walls, the course of the monarchy was shifting. Meanwhile, Catherine herself was nowhere near this secret council. In another wing of the palace, She had just tucked George, Charlotte, and Louis into bed. She moved quietly through her rooms, a half-finished cup of tea cooling beside her, her eyes on the fog pressing against the window panes. She felt restless, though she couldn't explain why. She didn't know that, upstairs, words written long ago were rearranging the path of her life. Catherine had never sought power. Her role had been lived with quiet diligence, smiling when it was expected, listening more than speaking, and shielding her children from the harshest edges of royal life. She had given the monarchy something it had struggled to find for decades, a sense of steady normality wrapped in grace. The Queen had noticed, and she had written it down. Back in that dim room, Anne eventually rose. She smoothed her skirt, her expression calm but determined. "Whatever we decide," she said softly, "the world is changing. We can change with it, or be left behind." She didn't wait for agreement. She didn't need it. The truth had been spoken. The risk had been taken. Charles said nothing. William said nothing. But in their silence, something began to form, as stubborn and unstoppable as the dawn. Perhaps this is how history really turns, not with grand speeches or fanfare, but with a letter, a choice, and a truth no one expected. The monarchy the world thought it knew was already shifting, not because of a king or an heir, but because of a woman who didn't even know her name had been written into destiny. And so, while Catherine sat in her quiet rooms, unaware of the letter with her name on it, the foundations of the crown trembled. Was she ready to become more than consort, more than support, more than the elegant figure at William's side? Or would this secret remain buried, a silent testimony to what the Queen had once believed? The palace will never confirm, of course. Perhaps the letter will remain a rumor, tucked into whispers and speculation, never officially acknowledged. But those who know the weight of history, those who have walked the palace halls long enough, understand that not all truths are shouted. Some are whispered, some are hidden, and some wait patiently to be revealed at exactly the right time. Maybe that night was the first crack of light. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. Because if the Queen's vision was right, then the crown's future rests not on the shoulders of a king, but on the quiet strength of a woman who never asked for it. A woman who might yet prove that the monarchy's survival depends not on tradition alone, but on trust, the kind only Catherine seems able to inspire. And in that way, the Queen's final message still lingers, not in marble statues or golden thrones, but in the memory of a folded letter laid gently on a table, and the silence of three royals who suddenly saw the monarchy in a very different light. But what deeper truth lies behind Catherine, being the Queen Elizabeth saw coming? Stay connected to your screen. Catherine.
It is with deep sadness that Buckingham Palace has announced Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in Commonwealth history, has died at the age of 96.
A gray sky pressed down on the city, and though the palace gates looked unchanged to the outside world, those inside knew everything had shifted. For the first time in 70 years, the crown had moved to a new head. But behind the gilded doors of Buckingham Palace, whispers began to stir. Rumors of a letter, of a wish the late Queen had left behind. If true, it wasn't just a note. It was dynamite. They say the meeting happened in one of the palace's most private rooms. The air smelled of polished wood and anxiety. Princess Anne arrived first, folder in hand, her face determined. Charles followed, visibly tense, beneath his practiced calm. William came last, quiet but sharp-eyed. It was Anne who broke the silence, laying the folder flat on the table and declaring, "This is Mother's final wish." Inside was a message handwritten in the Queen's familiar style, and it said something extraordinary. Catherine, Yes, Catherine, not born royal but tested through loyalty and resilience, was the one she believed could carry the monarchy forward. Now, it wasn't an order to rewrite succession. Elizabeth was far too wise to think tradition could bend so easily. But the spirit of her words was clear. Catherine was the beating heart of the family's survival. And in that moment, history seemed to tremble. Charles reportedly bristled. "This is madness," he snapped, hand striking the table. Succession, after all, had always been a bloodline, not a choice. For William, the letter cut deeper. He had lived his entire life, preparing to inherit a throne. Only to hear that perhaps his wife was not. He was the one destined to save it. Was he being undermined? Or had the Queen seen something he had quietly known all along? He had watched Catherine face storms with calm. He often struggled to muster himself. He had watched strangers become devoted admirers simply through her kindness. Maybe, though the thought hurt, his grandmother had understood before anyone else that Catherine already was the monarchy's anchor. Of course, none of this spilled into headlines. To the public, nothing had changed. Charles became King Charles III, crowned with all the splendor expected of him. But outside Britain, doubts grew louder. In Australia, in the Caribbean, voices demanded freedom from the crown. Polls revealed younger generations questioning why the monarchy mattered at all. Even in Britain, grief for the Queen gave way to quiet uncertainty about her successor. Charles, for all his experience, has never escaped the shadows of his past. His decades-long path with Camilla, his messy divorce, the painful years under Diana's glare, all still cling to him in the public's memory. He wears the crown, but it doesn't seem to wear him with the same ease it did Elizabeth. His reign, though expected, feels fragile. And then there is William, the man the world sees as the future. Strong, relatable, a family man. Yet his marriage to Catherine often complicates his spotlight. The more dazzling she becomes, the harder it is for him to outshine her. Every handshake she offers, every hospital visit, every speech about mental health makes her more beloved. William may be the heir, but Catherine is the one who seems to capture hearts. Does he resent it? Or does he secretly agree with his grandmother's words, knowing Catherine is the monarchy's strongest card? Anne, ever the stoic, is said to have stood her ground in that private meeting. She reminded her brother and nephew that the Queen hadn't been confused. She had been deliberate. Tradition might resist, but survival required courage. "Mother saw it," Anne reportedly said, "and she wanted us to see it too." Meanwhile, Catherine herself remained blissfully, or perhaps deliberately, unaware of the storm swirling behind closed doors. She simply carried on, smiling with children, shaking hands at hospitals, walking into rooms, and making them warmer. She didn't need the throne to prove her worth. But isn't that perhaps why she was chosen? The Queen's letter, if it exists as rumored, was not about rewriting the laws of succession. It was about rewriting the story. For centuries, crowns were passed from one head to the next by blood alone. Elizabeth, after 70 years of seeing the world change, seemed to know that survival required more than lineage. It required spirit, strength, a connection to the people that tradition alone could not guarantee. And Catherine embodied all of it. Now the palace holds its silence. No announcements, no official changes, no declarations. But the whispers remain. Insiders claim the tension grows with each passing day. Could the monarchy one day acknowledge that Catherine's role is larger than anyone first imagined? Or will her power continue to exist quietly, through influence rather than title? The truth may never be spoken aloud, but the signs are there for those who care to look, in the way crowds light up in her presence. In this way, even critics struggle to falter. In this way, the late Queen, with her extraordinary foresight, may have left a final clue. For outside the walls of Buckingham Palace, tradition can no longer stand unshaken. Nations drift, public trust wanes, the monarchy teeters between relevance and irrelevance. But within Catherine lies something rare: hope. And perhaps that is why, when the Queen looked to the future, she didn't see protocol. She saw Catherine's face, and that's where things get very interesting. But what hidden story lies behind the crown no one expected? Stay glued to your screen. The crown no one expected. Imagine a family bound by centuries of tradition, yet shaken by doubts that no crown or title can silence. The British monarchy has always thrived on ceremony, but behind the polished facade of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, unease has been stirring. Whispers in corridors, restless nights, and unspoken fears tell a story of a dynasty standing at a crossroads, not because of scandals or sudden betrayals, but because the world outside the palace walls no longer looks at the crown with the same reverence it once did. King Charles, carrying the weight of his late mother's legacy, feels that shift more than anyone. He has always known that being king is not only about wearing a crown, but about commanding belief. Yet belief is fragile, and he senses the ground shifting beneath him. Many say that since ascending the throne in 2022, his nights have grown longer. Rumors suggest he often retreats into his study, poring over old history books, searching for guidance from monarchs of the past who ruled through storms of uncertainty. Could their lessons save him? Or is his reign destined to be remembered as the one that faltered? If Charles carries his worries in restless study, Prince William shoulders him in silence. For him, the fear is not only about duty, but about his children. When he looks into the bright, trusting eyes of George, Charlotte, and Louis, he wonders, what kind of future is he preparing them for? A future of service and respect, or one where the monarchy is nothing more than a fading tradition? That quiet question lingers in his chest like a stone, immovable and heavy. And then there is Catherine. Unlike the others, she has never appeared consumed by power or desperate for status. Instead, she meets the uncertainty with a calm dignity that surprises many. She does not chase the crown, yet it seems to be chasing her. Some speculate that her greatest strength lies in her quiet acceptance, in her ability to adapt to a world that is moving forward, even when the palace lags behind. Could it be that the one who never sought the throne is the very figure the monarchy needs most? To the outside world, the illusion remains intact. Glittering ceremonies, carefully staged photographs, state banquets, and smiling appearances all maintain the image of stability. But insiders whisper that beneath the grandeur, a slow-burning tension is threatening to split the foundations. A fault line, invisible to the public, yet impossible to ignore within the palace walls. For centuries, the House of Windsor has weathered storms, but this moment feels different. Less about scandal and more about survival in a modern age that questions whether crowns still matter at all. The question is whispered but rarely spoken aloud. Is the monarchy as strong as it looks, or is its perfect image already beginning to crumble? And if it does, who will steady it? King Charles, with his long-awaited reign? Prince William, with the burden of inheritance on his shoulders? Or Catherine, with her resilience and grace? The one no one expected to rise, but perhaps the one destined to carry the crown into a future no one yet fully understands? The world watches carefully, holding its breath. The palace still stands, but time may decide whether it remains a fortress of tradition or becomes a relic of history. And in that balance lies the quiet power of a woman who never asked for the crown, yet might wear it better than anyone before her. But what hidden wisdom from Princess Anne is shaping Catherine's rising legacy? Stay with us to find out. How Princess Anne's wisdom shapes Catherine's rising legacy. What began as a subtle bond between two royal women has grown into one of the monarchy's most unexpected strengths. Princess Anne and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, could not appear more different at first glance. One hardened by decades of unshakable duty, the other navigating the complexities of a modern monarchy under relentless global scrutiny. Yet behind palace walls, their relationship has quietly become a lifeline for the crown's future. It was never about friendship in the traditional sense. Instead, theirs became something more resilient, a mentorship shaped not by lectures but by shared endurance. Anne never imposed herself, never meddled. She offered something rare in royal life: discreet wisdom. Catherine, in turn, recognized in Anne a living example of perseverance, a woman who had survived storms without complaint and served faithfully without spectacle. Insiders whisper of private talks away from cameras, quiet conversations where Anne reinforced Catherine's instincts rather than corrected them. Their collaboration, though rarely publicized, showed a natural rhythm. Catherine's passion for early childhood development and Anne's tireless humanitarian commitments created a powerful combination. Together, they redefined what it meant to be a royal woman, not ornamental but operational, capable of shaping real impact beyond ceremonial roles. Anne, who had long safeguarded the monarchy's integrity, seemed to recognize something essential in Catherine. She did not seek the crown, nor did she craft her image through glamour. Her strength lay in patience and steadiness. That quiet resilience convinced Anne the monarchy's future could one day rest securely on Catherine's shoulders. But passing the torch, silently or not, brought new challenges Anne herself had never faced. For Anne, mistakes once faded quickly. Headlines appeared in the morning and vanished by nightfall. Gossip was confined to tabloids. There was room to breathe. Catherine's world is starkly different. In the digital age, every glance, pause, or absence is amplified within seconds. Rumors multiply before truth has a chance to intervene. Where Anne endured judgment in weekly columns, Catherine faces millions of instant opinions from faceless critics, each dissecting her every move. Anne has admitted that royal life was easier in her time, not with arrogance, but empathy. Unlike Anne, who built her legacy steadily over decades, Catherine must protect hers in real time. If she smiles too warmly, it's called calculated. If she appears reserved, she's branded cold. Attend too many events and she's accused of attention-seeking. Miss one, and whispers of negligence swirl. Every decision is a double bind. Every silence breeds speculation. And yet, Catherine does not falter. She absorbs the blows with composure, refusing to dignify the noise. This restraint, often unnoticed by critics, is admired deeply within the palace. To those who see beyond the headlines, she is playing the long game, standing tall where others might crumble, letting quiet consistency outlast chaos. Anne, with her blunt pragmatism, sees in Catherine the same steel she herself carried, the strength to endure without applause. Perhaps Catherine's most defining quality is her devotion to family. In 2023, when she skipped the Earthshot event, tabloids pounced. Yet her reason was simple: staying home to help Prince George with exams. Critics branded it unroyal, as though motherhood were a lesser duty. But in that quiet act, Catherine revealed a deeper truth. She was not abandoning duty, but redefining it. The crown's survival depends not only on appearances, but on raising the next generation with stability. This was not an isolated decision. Time and again, Catherine has chosen substance over spectacle. She is willing to miss the applause of one evening for the long-term strength of her children. These sacrifices rarely make headlines, but they plant seeds of resilience in her family, seeds that may one day secure the monarchy's survival. After all, future kings are not shaped solely on grand stages, but in late-night talks at home, reassured that, crown or not, they are loved first as children. Anne, ever the realist, understands this. Though she has been the monarchy's most tireless worker, she respects Catherine's balance. She knows true service is not always visible. It lies in sacrifices never recorded, in moments cameras never capture. In Catherine's choices, Anne sees wisdom, the strength to resist being consumed by expectations and to protect what matters most. The world may continue to judge. Social media will twist smiles into schemes and silences into scandals. But Catherine's determination to rise above the noise, never chasing power, never bending to pressure, has already reshaped her legacy. She represents a different kind of royalty, grounded not in grandeur alone, but in resilience and quiet authority. What began as mentorship has become something deeper, a transfer of trust, proof that strength does not always roar. It sometimes whispers. Anne has lived through decades of storms. Now she watches Catherine weather her own in an era where storms never sleep. The question lingers: will Catherine's quiet endurance be enough to steady the monarchy in the chaos of the digital age? No one can know for certain, but one truth is hard to deny. While headlines rise and fade, Catherine is building something sturdier, not a performance, but a legacy, not a spectacle, but a foundation. And perhaps that is exactly what the monarchy needs most. Catherine's quiet power and William's silent struggle, but the story never ended where people thought it would. Just when royal watchers believed they had seen it all, a deeper question began to stir in hushed conversations. How would William truly feel watching his wife embody the very role he had been trained for since birth? For William, this was not about jealousy, but about identity. The crown had always been his destiny, carved into his life from the moment he was a boy walking solemnly behind his mother's coffin in 1997. Every lesson, every duty, every quiet reminder from his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had been meant to prepare him for kingship. And yet, as the years passed, it wasn't William's name that people whispered with hope. It was Catherine's. Insiders say this realization cut deeper than any headline. He adored her without question. Her resilience, her kindness, the way she carried herself with effortless dignity. These were all the qualities a queen should possess. But when he learned that even his grandmother had quietly remarked that Catherine, not William, might be the one to secure the monarchy's survival, it struck something inside him he could not easily shake. Was he enough? Had his careful, measured ways been mistaken for weakness? Had he carried the weight of duty so heavily that he had forgotten how to inspire? And then there was Catherine herself. Calm, unshaken, almost disarmingly natural. She never asked for the crown. She never campaigned, never schemed, never demanded more than her role as wife and mother. And perhaps that was her secret. By not chasing power, she became the very person everyone trusted with it. Even William, caught between admiration and quiet fear, began to see her differently, not merely as his partner standing faithfully beside him, but as a force of her own, a woman destined to shape history in her own way. The turning point, however, came not from the whispers, but from Catherine's own words. When the late Queen's wishes were finally revealed, many expected Catherine to respond in the way most royals do, with a polite acceptance or a scripted acknowledgement. Instead, her reply stunned both Charles and William. She said in her calm and deliberate manner that while many dream of leading a monarchy, every wife dreams first of keeping peace within her family. And, for that reason, she would need time before giving any answer. It was a statement so simple, yet so powerful. It told the world that Catherine understood the throne was far more than ceremony and crowns. It was a weight heavy enough to fracture families if taken without care. And it was also a reminder that her strength lay not in ambition, but in balance. She was not seeking glory. She was seeking harmony, a quality rarer, perhaps, than all the traditions and protocols that defined royal life. Whether she accepts or not, one thing has become clear. Queen Elizabeth was right to place her faith in Catherine. In a world where tradition wavers and the monarchy faces questions about its very survival, perhaps it will not be centuries of bloodlines or rigid laws that hold it together, but the quiet strength of a woman who never wanted the crown, yet might wear it better than anyone ever expected. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more royal content, and also click the next video shown on your screen.